You ever see those videos that are like top 10 indie RPGs to get your toes sucked in your sleep? Sea of Stars, Crosscode, Chained Echoes, what's that other one? Cosmic Star Heroine, just a few staples of a shitty recycled list from a burnt out YouTuber. Yeah, well now it's my turn. I don't play a lot of modern games. I pick a new shooter once every 5 or so years, and I tend to habitate in a retro hole otherwise, but a few titles leak through, and a small percentage of those really take my fancy. Splintered is one such game. It's a love letter to Dragon Quest, with a narrative split into repetitious parts focused around the concept of someone taking his ball and going home. Every time you're on the cusp of victory, a guy crams his fist into your salad and absolutely tosses it. The world gets jumbled, the objectives remain the same, but the approach is mixed up every time, and you're tasked with hitting all the same strides as your vanilla journey, but like a blind guy painted over it, and not in an annoying way like blinds are known to do. I'm not that old, at least that's what I tell myself. I'm far too young to have enjoyed Dragon Quest anywhere near the release window. Despite that, the original Lizard adventure ticks a very specific box that no other game comes close to. It may well be the comfiest game in existence, and saying that made me want to delete my channel. You're a blue crab guy, you move to contextual trigger points, make number go up so you can make number go up so you can make number go up, and then you kill a dragon or you be his best mate, and now you don't need real ones. It's good enough to distinguish itself from its contemporaries and start a subgenre all its own. Splintered's pretty good too, give it a try. If you're after something with a little more originality, so this is an indie JRPG video. It's either Dragon Quest, Chrono Trigger, or Final Fantasy, and you need to pick one, right now. Final Fantasy is it? Well, you're in luck, as the next game I want to shill is Dungeon Antigua. Every time I type it, I reflexively type Antigua. I don't know why, I've never been Spanish. People seem to think it's more like wizardry. I wouldn't know, I've never played the series, but it is engaging and fun, so whether it's Final Fantasy coded or wizardry pilled doesn't matter. It's one of those things where you see what you're familiar with, like a face in unassuming scenery, or a spastic in the mirror. I will say though, the party selection and dungeon appearance is very NES Final Fantasy. With a custom party of 5, you're free to select any sequence of the 4 starting classes, a sex, and an alignment. Good and evil characters cannot coexist. Makes sense, and while you're recommended a starting party of 2 warriors, a thief, a mage, and a priest, there's no recommendation for alignment. Each class fits its role perfectly, does exactly what you expect of them, and while the thief has little purpose in combat, he is functionally necessary. If you go in without him, you've made a mistake. With minimal story, this title is focused on dungeon exploration and forward momentum, and the design makes that a pleasure. You start in a dark room, there's a fog of war, and moving through the dungeon unveils the map in increments of whatever your light source is capable of. Areas consist of thoroughfares or smaller rooms with points of interest, and once revealed, the layout is always evident, but the contents of the room only reveal themselves upon entry. Each time you enter a dungeon, there's a semi-randomized element to those rooms, wherein it could contain a foe or a chest, and a little red flag is laid upon that which you've already explored. It's that Final Fantasy II room fake-out bullshit, just without getting cucked. I love the little flags, as it's easy to lose track of where you've been, as maps are simple and loops on both axes, and the busier a floor gets, the tougher it can be to keep your latest exploits in your short-term memory. You'll also want to hit these rooms up as much as possible, as chests do give you items worth owning, which doubly serve as store upgrades. If you sell a novel item to a store, they get it in stock, it'll become buyable, which means your single farmed item turned into a replenishment, and you'll never have to farm that item again. Unless it's one of the handful where you can't do that, like the endgame items, but you know, that makes sense. In this way, it's worth having a quick skim of older dungeons, as loot's randomized, so even when you've moved past an area, you may still find something viable on a repeat visit. Money's also quite tight until the very end, giving chests even more utility. Death contributes to this a bit, much like real life. It is expensive to die, you'll lose all your money and you guys aren't revived, at least on hard difficulty, so you gotta pay a priest with a purse of dirt. It might sound like this adds unnecessary steps to recalibrate your baseline, a bit of money farming before you can return to gameplay, and I guess it does, but death needs some sort of penalty, just don't die and then the criticism vanishes. I know you wouldn't fall to a cheeky trapped chest. You did bring your thief along, right? The music is pretty slick too, it's exactly what you'd expect, which is not a bad thing, but the boss theme is straight up Final Fantasy IV's battle theme, and then the 6th floor soundtrack is the Red Wings theme, but I'll give them a pass for having good taste. Combat's simple enough, on hard it wasn't particularly difficult, some of the bosses will get you if you're underleveled or not prepared, but you'll quickly find out where you are once you engage them. Most of the standard enemies are threatening enough to not mindlessly chop through them, at least when they're around your level. I can imagine on lower difficulties you can probably just hold attack and come out unscathed, so I would recommend hard. I actually had to think a few times. Imagine that. I also want to profess my love for magic charges, as they make each tier of spell uniquely viable, not all drawing from the same pool, though the lower levels are heavily underpowered and do lose out to melee. And then, once the late game kicks in, it far surpasses melee, as is tradition. Even healing is quite gimped. The earlier spells do about as much as the overpriced potions, so when you're spelunking, you've got to hug the wishing wells, which are reusable full party heals. It pays to play conservatively. Oh, here's something to get excited about. Spell tomes can be used as items and are selectively useful in combat, but they also feature map utility. Light tomes display more of a map at once. The teleport variant are good to save cash from a party wipe, or if you forget to keep a charge for the teleport spell. And they can be pricey as it's a 2026 simulator, but that's because their function is well worth it. Also, the speed of the game is great. Combat feels just right. Nothing overstays its welcome. But at the same time, it's not trying to move out of your way. It knows it deserves your time, but it is far from sluggish. I'm not going to spoil too much. This is a genuine recommendation, but there are a bunch of cool things in the later floors, such as no magic or no melee rooms, and these breed interesting interactions. And of course, the end of the game can have a bit of a grind, but at only 15 hours with a bit of idle time and class changing and re-grinding on my part, it is a short, rewarding experience. The second title could have leaned into iterative design, and it did, but it also reworked enough to justify itself. It veers hard from whatever aspects of wizardry were there. The CRPG roots are gone. We are full Final Fantasy V, so they'd say. I'd argue it's a bit closer to 3, but no one gives a shit about that one. There is a revisited vibe, but I couldn't see any reused assets, not that I'd mind. I love the visuals of both titles, but it does feel like the last game. We're down to 4 dudes this time from the 5 before, and are tasked with a starting class, which apparently gives you a lifetime stat benefit, so it's kind of important. Class swapping no longer resets your levels, and learned skills are equipable, so class is more of a suggestion than a wedding ceremony, which means you can schmooze through it. They don't carry over stats, but mastering them does grant you permanent stat bonuses, giving you an opportunity to make your warrior a bit more mind-inclined or to speed up your healers. I again picked the hard difficulty, as I'm known to do. It's not so much that I want to show you how big my penis is, it's that you deserve to know. I always pick hard, as normal is usually a breeze, and hard gives you an opportunity to go hard, to spec for certain things, to build. It pushes the mechanics to the theoretical limit, forcing you to as well. Also, playing a game on harder difficulties is the quickest way to find mechanical flaws, and, not be a grass-fed game journalist. Naturally, enemies are harder, but the save founts from the last game are now a one-time per dungeon use, though their repeated appearance is still pretty generous. We're no longer confined to a single dungeon, we're breaking out, as there are actually 6 this time. They took the idea of Tartarus and split it into something a bit more modular, palatable. You've got your beginner dungeon, which also has higher level hidden areas, an iron ore mine you're tasked with liberating from goblins, and a couple others. You actually start with access to the final dungeon, so if you want to go in and fuck shit up immediately, you can, but that shit will certainly be you. Chests still function like the former game, though now monsters roam among the flowers, so you're able to plan your movements a bit better instead of gunning it and praying you don't get randomly mobbed. Healing, both item and magic, are much cheaper to complement the shared MP system. That's right, the magic's been discharged, a relic of a forgotten time. That being about 6 months prior, they're pumping these fucking things out, I'm here for it. It makes sense to make healing about 1/10 of the cost, as dungeons are slightly wider now, making those longer jaunts mildly easier to account for resource-wise. With the few major changes, most of what I said about the last title still rings true, so at the risk of repeating myself, I will simply say, play either or both of these games. If you're still not sold, there's a demo for both titles, so get on it. Hard recommend. No, extreme recommend. And speaking of demos, we have an unreleased game, To the Grave, The Wilds of Faenora. It's a hell of a name. It reminded me a little of Ogre Battle, so I will be extremely harsh. I sat down, played for about 4 hours in a single sitting, which is very rare for me. There's something to this. My first thought was that a roguelike with Ogre Battle combat could not work. It would never work. The reason the battles have weight in Ogre Battle is because of the context around them, but this game is actually very addictive. Classes go up levels and can promote, they get stronger the more attempts you have. Gear is randomized, there are tiers of monster you can opt into fighting. It's got some major balance issues. I genuinely believe it's unbeatable in its current form, or if it is beatable, it takes a golden combination of extreme grinding and luck. Certain classes with maxed out levels would still get one shot from the first boss, and healing is scarce and random. That said, until this realization, I was completely hooked. It tapped into that monkey part of my brain, the low IQ part that mobile gamers use. You can do manual combat, but there's no real reason to, as you can stop auto combat to use the moves that need a full charge bar, or items whenever you wish. And then I had a look at the Steam discussion, and people saying the Discord's been nuked, there have been no updates since like 2023 or something, but then there are updates on the game's page itself. I genuinely don't know what's going on with it, but I hope the dev does continue and also fixes the terrible difficulty curve. Furry games. I'm either going to learn more about niche fetishes than I ever wanted to, or I'm going to have an amazing time in spite of the character designs, and there's not really an in-between, except for Terra Memoria, which is in between. Unfortunately, for as good as this game looks, I would say it completely flounders, and there's not much going on behind the eyes. It's made in Unity, and I got trapped in terrain within the first 5 minutes, which honestly painted my experience before I even cracked the titanium white. We're seeing a title clearly inspired by games like Grandia and Breath of Fire 4. It looks fantastic, the music's tight, everything else just kinda sucks. Breath of Fluoride. This is why I script shit. I'm too nasty to speak off the cuff. I don't want to be harsh, I don't regret giving an indie dev a couple bucks for a pretty unique experience, but there's not much to this game, which is ironic as it's crammed with so many systems, you would assume the opposite at a glance. I'm going to list some features, follow along. We've got town building, resource gathering for crafting furniture and structures for said town, as well as cooking and equipment, some weirdly disconnected, albeit interesting puzzles. It's a lot of a little. I don't hate it, it's just not very engaging. The effort that went into some of these things that appear a handful of times probably could have gone into tighter combat, or a more meaningful story, a better written dialogue. It defies its own premise, which starts strong and then immediately drops off. The world centered around magic and technology, the former being looked down on, with the latter being wholly funded by an expendable resource in crystals. Towns are being stripped of their resources, left desolate, the supplies drying up, the world's on the brink of collapse, and key locations are having infestations of invading mechanical foes. There's a lot to take in at the start, and then the entire narrative is just a linear fumble through until you find a genuinely terrible outcome for all the events. When I think of a narrative about extraction and misuse of finite resources, the non-radicalized part of me thinks of Ark the Lad Twilight of the Spirits. I'm scraping at my own flesh, not to mention Breath of Fire 3. Oh shit, there it is. Anyway, sit down and let Grabs tell you about a true fucking RPG. Spirit Stones, a finite resource responsible for two warring factions' means of survival, technology and magic. As the game progresses, each faction becomes more hostile, and as a result, the price of Spirit Stones increases by 400% come endgame. This has narrative and mechanical weight, you're told that it impacts you, and it actually does, though it does take a backseat to what ultimately becomes a far greater narrative. I got a whole video on that, it's a great game. Needless to say, Terra Memoria doesn't even explore these themes introduced initially, but nothing was stopping it. All you'd have to do is consider the most extreme angle it could take and then scale it back accordingly. That's literally all storytelling is. I hope you didn't go to university for that. How embarrassing for you. Tasks feel a bit gamified, a little checklisty, and I've got a feeling that it's due to everything being delivered as a literal checklist. It's honestly insulting. Like, narratives at their best should be a natural flow-on of prior events. Because of X, Y occurs. The worst types of narrative progression are characters hopelessly bumbling through from thing to thing, and then this, and then that, and then this, and then this, and Terra Memoria is very much a and then the party do this game. Outside of an NPC and a checklist telling you what to do, nothing really feels connected. This is likely due to the short duration and rapid acquisition of party members. Having 6 dudes introduced over the course of a few hours while trying to resolve the main events and giving them a meaningful presence, that's tough. You don't want to pad your game world or the events within just to explore your characters more. Or do you? Like I said, I don't want to rag on these dudes, the game's impressive, but the narrative's weak and the combat is not engaging at all. It's got Grandia-esque combat with turn priority, speed, and action delays, but there's none of the between elements like accounting for movement and positioning, or being fun. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. With 3 main dudes and 3 auxiliary dudes to back them up and change their utility, every technique is based on a magic element, which enemies are selectively weak to. Hitting a weakness chips a shield down more than an elementally neutral hit, and once the shield breaks, their actions are delayed and they take increased damage. Every regular foe has 3 shields. Bosses can have more, but even a higher shield count never matters too much, especially as bosses too have weaknesses. Every battle consists of surviving long enough to shield break and then moving into a damage rush to finish them off before they recover. The difficulty is simply not there, despite being decent levels of customization through equipment that individually boost elements, as well as the cooking minigame which permanently raises health. You could make the game harder by ignoring core features, but that seems a bit counterintuitive, not to mention the difficulty wouldn't increase by all that much, it would just make combat annoying. It's certainly novel, I've never seen anything quite like it, but every element feeds back into a system that doesn't reward the small amount of effort it asks. And as you fully heal between every battle, everything becomes a balls to the wall, all-out battle that even bosses don't feel that grandiose or tough, they just kind of blend in with every other foe. It's okay to pick one thing and do it really well, or even a few select things. You don't have to be an everything game. Also, the whole world's a straight line. Also, the quests are literally just give item to person whose name you forgot. Also, the third, all the story important enemies are the same boring robots in a world full of non-human characters with vast design discrepancies. Why can't there be a turtle boss? What's going on? Despite my almost immediate lack of investment, I did want to talk about this game as it's important to not deep throat everything you cover. JRPG YouTubers, take note. If they reuse the art style for a mechanically and narratively more engaging game, I'd be all over that. Maybe a bit less bloom would be nice, but even the fairly standard Unity 3D was passable. I can envision the exact kind of humanoid blob creature this would appeal to with its wonky dialogue and comfy game veneer. If you're that kind of dude, you'll probably dig exploring the world and interacting with the characters as they exist, building towns for them. But as a JRPG fan, there's not a lot here, though I did enjoy the puzzles. Look, there is a demo, I would urge you to give it a try at least, maybe there's something I missed, maybe it's for you, who knows. I originally wanted one more game in this video, but the one that I picked was a passable Mega 10 clone which I dropped off halfway through and didn't really have anything to say about. It was fine, but the whole time I was thinking, why aren't I just playing Digital Devil Saga, which is not what you want people thinking when they play your game. It's fine, but it doesn't do anything novel or better than core Mega 10. It's bare bones and needed something to distinguish itself from its inspiration. I'd be interested in any follow-up titles from this developer as they've demonstrated they can create a solid foundation and see it through to the end, but it also needs to expand in a way which this title unfortunately doesn't. Anyway, thanks for watching. I will happily accept your indie recommendations in the comments. Bye now!